He's doing good.
Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order tonight. This is our regular council meeting, May 17, 2012. And you will please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance, remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's bow. Father, we thank you for this evening, for all the many gifts you've given us. Thank you for the rain you gave us this week and the beautiful sunshine we have out there tonight. We ask that you be with us tonight and let us go through this meeting, accomplish great things for our city. All these things we pray in your name. Amen.
all our guests and visitors tonight. And we'll have I'll begin up here, but first we will consider the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make the motion that we approve the agenda, but I'd like to make a notation at this time. I was going to add to the agenda, under old business, the discussion we had relative to the bike and walking trails at Heritage Park, and since that's already been accomplished by putting signs there, it's not necessary to add it to the agenda, so I make the motion we approve it as stated.
I have a motion on the agenda.
We had a motion. We have a motion first to. Do we have a second on his motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We got that. Now we're discussing. You want to amend this?
Yes, I do. Under old business, D, approval of amended fiscal year 2012 budget provides for funding of 2 additional firefighters.
Right.
That was resolved in the April 19th meeting, where in the proposed there, which passed 4-1, so after further discussion, Councilman Hutton modified his motion immediately, hire 2 firefighters, appropriate the savings realized from the accepting the One Beacon insurance proposal toward the cost of hiring the firefighters, and to amend the budget to provide the additional needed funds to cover the cost of hiring
I think what this is doing is telling us where it's coming from within the budget. The additional funds. Is that not right, Mr. Wood? Is that the purpose of this?
I
To tell us where they're coming
I
from?
think there was some misunderstanding on our part in terms of the initial action being accompanied by a budget amendment. I've since been corrected based on the minutes that Ms. Stanton provided that reveal that the motion included a budget amendment.
It didn't say where it was coming from.
It did not necessarily say where it was coming from. The assumption there would be the general fund.
Mr. Mayor, I think I'd like to, I won't amend the motion because I think it should be discussed because there were a lot of assumptions made when we voted for that need to be discussed when we come to the amendment. And the specifics of where the money would come, should the council approve the budget amendment, need to be discussed, so.
The budget amendments have been approved.
No, they have not.
I'd say they have. You'll read it. It does says it's been approved.
It's been approved to make it, but the specific motion.
We can worry about the specifics. The motion has been approved.
What we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and hear this at the proper time, and we can, if you wish, you could table it or move to table it or whatever, delete it from the agenda notice at that point. All right, let's go ahead and have our 10-minute.
We had a motion on this, sir.
The amendment, okay.
I'm
going to restate that.
The motion is to approve the agenda as stated.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Okay, 10-minute public input period. Andy Bonner.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Andy Bonner, and I am a Canton resident. My wife and I were walking in Heritage Park this morning and noticed that the city had already started to mark the path for the bikers and walkers where they will face each other. They've also placed a rectangular sign at the northern entrance to the park and also one place at the southern entrance showing the correct direction to walk and ride. I want to thank the mayor, the council, and everyone else involved in moving ahead on this important issue. I feel that this will make the park safer for both walkers and bikers. And thank you for allowing me to speak on this important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill McGruder.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I wish I could go back and change my vote on the rezoning of the Golf Canet House because of the information that's come forward since then and because of the information that still has not been presented. I'm against it, and I know the best protection of the house would be for it to remain office professional zoning it now has. Last Friday, Mr. Latimer came to our house and showed us the new layout for the project. However, we were still not given any answers as to density, number of stories in the buildings, number of bedrooms in the building. Finally, he said that the worst-case scenario would be 2-story with 4 bedrooms. To me, this means 40 bedrooms, which would present an enormous population. There would be many children with no place to play except the grounds of the historic home. Mr. Latimer expressed an interest in selling the historic house to an individual or organization who would restore it faithfully. He did not seem to realize that this development would destroy any restorer's interest. With this kind of density, there could be no way the historic house would survive. More importantly, it would lose its appeal for restoration by professional preservationists, such as the Georgia Trust. Also, as an aside, office professional would not cause as much traffic at all hours. I urge you to accept this change. I urge you not to accept this change without learning all of the details. It is as if one has to ask the right question to get the right answer. While this new concept is pretty green and pink picture, that's all it is. It's a concept. In the past, we have accepted zoning changes without having all the details, and we've been stung by it. Please remember that Mr. Latimer owned these properties before the public hearing. I've given you a copy of a letter from Mark McDonald, President and CEO of the Georgia Trust, expressing their concern and interest in this dilemma. Also, there's a couple of pages of the latest Georgia Trust magazine showing you what amazing things can be done with historic houses. Neighbors would like to see a turnaround in the direction the old Sunnyside neighborhood has taken in recent years. My first and foremost interest is the preservation of the Golf Canet house, and the best hope for that would be to leave the zoning office profession. Thank you.
Mark Walker.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, at this time, say that I have served for a number of years on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And during that time, we always tried to look at, from an objective standpoint, and from the codes and from the regulations that the city had in making decisions. The Planning and Zoning Board has met. They have unanimously approved, recommended that this be changed to an R2 status. Mr. Latimer has gone out of his way. He's spoke with all the council members. He's spoke with the golf. He's tried to address every concern that's out there. This particular property has been on the market for 15 to 16 months with no offers. It was such an important historic site in the city, it seems like the Historical Society or someone would have stepped up and been interested in it. I actually lived by this house 30 years ago in an apartment that Miss Satterfield owned. And at that time, it was in poor condition. And today, it's in poor condition. It's not been restored, it's not been kept up. It's changed hands several times since that has taken place. And I'd ask the council to follow the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission. They make a valid point in recommending this change to R2A, and I think that the council needs to consider that. To do otherwise, I think would, and I understand the other issues that's been brought up, and they're valid. But Mr. Latimer's not been contacted by anybody that's wanted to buy the property since he's purchased it. There's been no discussion of that. But I think it's the best direction for this particular area of the city. If you look at that particular zoning overlay, why it was done OP several years ago, nobody can determine. Because it's a residential area, it's always been residential, it's not been anything else. So I would ask that this mayor and council consider that recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Committee. And as you know, once you vote, you vote. So, thank you.
William Locke.
Thank you, Mayor Hopgood, and council members, for allowing me to speak today. My name is William Lobb, and I'm a local business owner of a CPA firm. We have been in business for almost 30 years, and we are proud to have a relationship with small businesses and personal tax planning and preparation over this period of time. We have clients in the area. I'm running for Congress in the 11th District, which encompasses parts of Fulton, parts of Cobb, all of Bartow, and all of Cherokee County. I know some of you know that I think we may all agree that we have no idea where our money goes when we send it off with our tax filings in April. I am a CPA and I understand the numbers. It is time for someone to go to Washington that understands math. I am running a grassroots campaign. I believe the grassroots momentum and you all are a primary example of what a ground level movement can do for a cause and an organization. You may not be seeing my dashing face on a television set over the next 10 weeks. I do not believe in wasting time or money. I do not need to run for Congress. I have to run for Congress. As a small business owner, I consult small businesses every day. I'm one of 11 siblings, and I've personally seen what this economy has done to people. I would like your consideration in the primary election on July 31st. But most of all, I want to thank you, the council, for allowing me to speak today. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Mary Akers?
Well, good evening, Mayor Hopgood and all the members of the council. I'm Mary Akers, and I'm the Executive Director of Cherokee Arts Center. And I wish to issue an invitation to everyone to come out this weekend to Cherokee, to Canton Festival of the Arts. It will be in Brown Park on May 19th and 20th. We have an artist market, we have a children's section, we have entertainment, and we also have an estimated 10,000 participants. So with that being said, I want to offer my great gratitude for those who helped make this possible. The City of Canton, the Mayor Hopgood, Scott Wood, Ginger Gerard, David Kenjimmy and his crew, Scott Butner, the Canton Police Department, the Canton Fire Department, Trish Fowler, and Camille Ways. I'm overwhelmed at your support. We're going to have a wonderful festival. I hope I see all of you there. Thank you very much.
John Rust?
Mayor and Council, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I spent a portion of the day today preparing a suggestion for Heritage Park which would address the issues that apparently have, somebody thinks have already been solved. Several months ago, whether this was correct or not, or whether they should or not, the City Council took it upon themselves to vote to paint Heritage Park. And I sent a letter to the editor which got the result I wanted, which was not necessarily to knock the park, that paint job out, but just to get public input. Do you want it or don't want it? Well, the public spoke, and the next meeting, you reversed yourself. What I'm very troubled about, to find out late this afternoon after I spent time today preparing something that seems a little bit worthless right now, is that why did this get done? It seems to me that you are elected to make the decisions. You took it upon yourself to do it the first time. You're preparing to do it again tonight a second time. Whether that's right or wrong, that's a prerogative you had as elected officials, and somebody just went ahead today, interesting that it's the day of the voting city council meeting, to paint the park. I don't know how bad it is or how good it is, whatever, but I can tell you right now, it will not address the issue at all. You've got a handful of people that even use the park for bikes. You've got an even smaller handful of people that are disobeying the rules. Well, disobedience of the rules that are now laid down on the concrete and on signage, and apparently it's a little confusing as to which way you're supposed to go, based on the confusion of where the sign is on the concrete and the sign on the side of the It's a posted sign, metal sign. But bottom line is this, you pick up the phone if someone's breaking the rule, going the wrong way, going too fast, whatever it is. Going too fast isn't even addressed in these signs, and that's really part of the safety issue here, is going too fast regardless. But if you pick up the phone and call the police department, I spent a good amount of time today talking to Todd Van Zandy about this issue and figuring out a way together that we could solve this thing with an ordinance that would restrict the use of the park to those people that keep the rules and throw out the people that don't, in a way to write citations to prevent that from happening. But, I think now you just step back and say, well, let's see what happens, because maybe I'll send another letter to the editor saying that, okay, the city council didn't vote to do it. The last time I posted the name and phone numbers of the people that voted for that paint job, and they all got calls and emails. This time I'm just going to post the person who apparently made the decision, which was Scott Wood, to do that without council approval. So I think, get your email inbox ready, Scott. I hope you get a lot of them. Maybe they'll be favorable, maybe they won't, but the bottom line is that this looks like you usurped the power of the city council. You went ahead and painted that. And since you're on probation now, I hope you're standing on solid ground, because those are the kind of things you shouldn't do. So I hope it works. I think I have an idea that would work regardless of these signs, but I don't really see any reason to do it, because maybe somebody else would decide to just go ahead and do it without city council vote anyway. So run your city, because it seems like it's supposed to be voters that control this thing, not hired officials. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you have in your package the minutes from May the 3rd. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes as submitted.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion.
I'll abstain, Mayor.
With one abstention, Mr. Bryan. The consent agenda, the only item we have on the consent agenda, approval to amend fiscal year 2012 budget provide for funding for Canton Theater Manager.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Under old business, discussion of senior services and benefits. Mr. Rush?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I brought this up at the last meeting, it was essentially to discuss the benefits and costs of seniors, and I was suggesting that council appoint a citizen committee of one senior and one non-senior to discuss the issue, but I'd like to amend that and defer this to the work session, because I think the issues that we face now are a little more severe than just senior services, because my understanding is that our property tax digest has declined again, so that puts us at about over $1 million in the hole, I think, from lost revenue. And then the Fire Services Committee spent a lot of time looking at what we need to do for fire protection, and if we choose to go, as the mayor had suggested a while back, to pursue an ISO 3 rating, we're going to have to make some changes in the way we do our taxations. It could be a fire tax that applies to everybody, as the county would have done, and it could be increasing millage. It could be a number of things. So what I'd like to suggest we do is defer this to the work session, and we talk about getting a citizens committee to look at the taxation for the city. And I know anything we do, we could do that ourselves, but anything we do, we need public support. And I'm suggesting maybe we should get public support before we do something. And so I'd like to just move this over to the June work session.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may make a comment, we should probably change the terminology to advisory group, a citizens advisory group, because committee implies the council here on that committee, and I think Mr. Rush wants a citizens advisory group.
Yes, I would agree. That's fine.
Okay, so your motion is to table this to the work session?
Correct.
Or to postpone it to the work session? Okay, postpone it. We all learn, don't we? Okay, we have a motion and a second? Second. All right. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voted for the motion. Thank you. Okay, item B, decision on planning commission recommendation, case Z 1203-001, West Latimer rezone. Request to rezone 2.15 acres from the OP office professional to R2A, two-family residential. Second reading. Okay, do we have any motion or discussion on this? Ken, do you?
I'm available to answer any questions council might have. If council will recall, Planning Commission did recommend approval with conditions.
And that was a little bit different plan, is that right?
Yes,
Than
sir.
what we have now. I think the only question that I would have, and I guess this would go directly to the petitioner, is that would you be willing to cut this parcel out in a parcel large enough for a single family dwelling, the minimum setbacks and all that, and so that there could be a buffer around it completely, and it would be somewhat independent, with still the requirement or condition that it be a single family use as single family. And I guess that would be in addition to any requirement or recommendation of a maintaining the exterior as much as possible in a historic manner.
I think he's agreeable to looking at that, but obviously that would affect access and various and sundry things with the layout of the property and proposed development of the property. But he is agreeable to that. The plans that were submitted are concept.
Understand.
And anything that is submitted has to go through proper approval process, and we'll be more than glad to look at it at that particular time.
Once it's zoned, though, it's a little bit too late to put any conditions on it. That condition can't be placed after it's zoned.
What would the condition be?
That parcel will be cut out in the size equivalent to a required for a single family dwelling with the proper allowance for proper setbacks.
But there's a lot of single family dwelling qualifications.
Well, what's the minimum? 10,000?
4,000?
Well, within the R2A zoning for a single-family dwelling, it specifies a minimum of 10,000 square feet, if I'm not mistaken. It's either 10,000 or 12,000 square feet.
Yes, a little less than a quarter of an acre.
That'd be close. I mean, to my knowledge, I believe if it was fully, under the R2, if it was fully developed, there could be, I think it's, Ken, is it 7.25 to the acre?
7.26 units to the acre is what the maximum allowable density computes to for the R2A. That is for duplexes as well as a single family.
So that's roughly 15 units if you max it out. I think we're proposing 10 or whatever.
It'll be
13 with the 3 houses. So there may be, I mean, if it's 6,000, then I think there's enough. 10's close. But then again, maybe you could get a variance if you're short 1,000 or 2 feet. I'm not sure. He says it's 10, it's probably 10,000. It's going to be real close, I think, though, because the maximum density would be 15. And if we built 10 new ones, that would be 13 on site.
Mr. Patterson, there was a question. You came up, you said there were some additional stipulations based off the new layout.
No, sir. I was reminding council and mayor that the planning commission recommendation did include 2 conditions. The first condition of the existing house known as the Galt House shall be preserved. Historical exterior character shall be maintained. Fencing and leyland cypress shall be installed along the rear property line.
Okay. I have a question. Right now, we're looking at duplexes, and it was possible 2-story. Would ask if a question come up, so if it's okay with council. Okay. 2-story, and last time we were talking about it's 3-4 bedrooms. How many bedrooms have you narrowed it down to? Or what's the square footage of one apartment or duplex? What would be the square footage based off your new plan?
The square footage is roughly if it's 3 or 4 bedroom, it's roughly 1,450 to 1,500 square feet per unit.
1,500. And the bedrooms then would be basically square footage. Here. The reason I'm asking is there is, I might call it a little known miscellaneous provision for the zoning ordinance section 88J 234, space and occupancy requirements. And it specifies the sleeping rooms to a minimum of 100 square feet with 60 square feet per occupant of those rooms. So there was this issue of how many people will be into the home. So if you have 3 bedroom, if we say it's going to be 3 bedroom, and that's it with that stipulation, then it probably fall into that provision.
I know most bedrooms are at least, 10 by 12, 12 by 12 from previous ones that I've done.
Right.
Any other questions?
I have a question for, I guess, Mr. Patton. Ken, as it's currently zoned up, okay, right? That is correct. Is the house under any kind of restriction from being demolished? In other words, could he just take out a demolition permit tomorrow and raise the house and haul it away?
If that was what Mr. Latimer wanted to do, there's no restrictions that would say that he cannot do that with the property as it's owned OP.
Okay, so it's not on the National Register. It's not, there's nothing protecting the house as it is now.
Nothing that we're aware of in regards to it being on the Georgia Historic Preservation or a National Historic Register.
And the current plan calls for preservation of the house. That's one of the stipulations I heard, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So we have a plan in place to preserve a historic home that could be demolished tomorrow if the owner chose to. Instead, the owner is choosing to preserve the house. Agreeing to that, the Planning and Zoning Committee has approved it unanimously. I make a motion that we approve this application with the conditions as stated.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Have a second. Discussion. Let me ask one question too. Do the conditions there prevent this structure from ever being used as a duplex?
No, sir.
So it could be a duplex in the future. If unlikely, but it could be.
I think it's got 2 front doors now, doesn't it?
It's got 2 doors in front.
Yeah.
I believe it does, and they come in the back.
There's an area that I'd like to bring up. I did take a tour of the property, and the building next to the one in question that nobody's lived in no telling how long. Mr. Latimer is going to put that building back into use, which right now should be, and I told him he's got better vision than I do, but that shouldn't have been something that the city should just wipe away, because it's in horrendous shape. So he's doing the city a service and the whole area by going in there and rebuilding that building or doing something with it, because right now it's in shambles.
I think that, Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add that I also visited the properties, just in about 30 minutes over there with Mr. Latimer. I have prior knowledge of other things that he has done. I'll be the first to vouch for their company. They do a very good job. All the duplexes I've seen that they've done are top of the line. They don't use shed materials, and they do actually a better job than most of the ones I've seen. So I think that it's going to be a plus for the area instead of what they've had in the past.
Agreed, and I'd like to add on is that Mr. Latimer showed that presently there are Lelands in the front. There will be Lelands in the back, and there are some trees on the rendering that will help block out the parking lot, which is a slope down, which you won't see the buildings except maybe the top floor. And then on the adjacent property that he does not own, he said he's going to put Lelands up there. So basically, you've got three sides of that property covered with trees.
Mr.
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to thank Mr. Latimer for taking the action that he did from our last council meeting. I had major concern about the parking right next to the old home, coming back with a good-looking plot plan, and just wanted to say thank you for that.
We have a motion to approve now. Obviously, there are some folks that believe that building does have some historical significance. How much, I guess is undetermined, and I don't know if that's others in the historical side of it. There are others that believe that it should be protected, and I believe that Mr. Latimer will do that, and hopefully improve the exterior as time goes on without any, I don't think there's any deadlines or anything. But I'm still a little bit interested. Would you be willing to say if it were 6,000 square feet around that house, you would, whatever the maximum you could get, and still do what you intend to do with the plan that you have demonstrated? Would you work to limit, to cut that out? I think it would.
We would strongly consider it. Yes.
And the reason I say that is because just like this thing here, this guy says that maybe there's a historic trust or something that might be willing to come in and buy it. I don't know. You don't know. And if that were the case, it would be, to me, simpler to do so at that point, maybe, than if it ends up maybe getting encroached upon by duplexes. And without that being cut out and proper buffers around it, there is that potential that those duplexes could encroach in and come fairly close to that historic home. And that was the only reason for doing that. If we could, get some commitment there from you to try to buffer that with a lot, minimum of 6,000 or something like that. Think you can do that? I mean, if you see you physically can't do it,
Yeah, I believe so, because, obviously I don't plan on anything between the 690 house and the other house. Everything is back towards the rear, so, I believe the footback, because the other thing is most of the setbacks are the building setbacks. That doesn't mean you can get a curb and gutter. If you've got a 25-foot setback, you may be able to get, a curb and gutter within 15 feet. So I believe that's something we should look at.
Okay.
I'll definitely get with Ken and Steve.
If we put that as a condition, you'll try to work with that.
My motion doesn't include that as a condition, I'm sorry, Mayor, we can't go pull the rug out from under the man. There's a motion, I call for a question to vote on this. Thank you.
Well, I'm not quite through yet, so we're not gonna do that just yet. We can go
I
ahead.
believe in good faith, you know, he'll make
Right.
every,
Mr. Mayor.
you know, effort to, if we can separate it out and do it in a way that's gonna fit all the requirements once he submits his plan, you know.
His site plan, is it approved? Does it have to go before anybody else again? Other than staff?
It'll have to go for land service permit through staff.
Okay, but that won't approve actually of the actual site plan or anything, right?
At that point,
Would.
we'll approve the construction.
That would be the site plan that would be approved for the land service permit.
That would be by staff.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr.
Yes.
Mayor,
Right.
I think Mr. Latimer has expressed his willingness to work with us to do what you've asked for.
I agree.
And again, I think we just ought to go on and vote on it. He's, from everything I've seen, he's made every concession that, you know, we've asked for and then some. I went over to look at the property also and saw what my concern again was also where the original parking was. And he's completely eliminated that problem by moving it to the back. And there's sufficient distance from where he and I stood in terms of their current house. It may not be 10,000 square feet, but as long as he's willing to work towards that direction of segregating or separating that plot out, I think we should go ahead and vote on it.
I agree, and I would like to say, Wes, Mark, both of you, your group has been really good. You came to see me, and I'm sure you've been visiting others to really explain and are willing to receive input. And I appreciate the fact that you are willing to consider that, because I think in the long term, it may be important, but short term, probably not. But we have a motion that we approve it as recommended. Is that right, Bill?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to bring up a point of order from the City Administrative Code here, Section 2-86, ranking of motions, paragraph G. If a council member believes that the motion that is being considered should be voted on, the council member may move to vote immediately. The motion is undebatable and a vote of 2/3 of the city council is required for the motion to pass. Now, we're all about rules and regulations here. We've just gone through adding all that. Now, Gina, I'm sorry, I just got to tell you, I don't appreciate you just trampling on the rules and regulations. That's excuse me, that the city is supposed to follow. Now, I'm sorry, but you continued on in
Apologies, I'm sorry.
of
I wasn't
the-
through talking, by the way, but
Okay.
you do have my apologies for interrupting you at that point and maybe not following exact procedure, but that's just the way I am. I'm sorry. Okay. The next item on the agenda, we got a vote on this, right? We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voted for the motion.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item is approval of the open records request policy and procedure.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion, we change the approval process to discussion and delay the approval because I have problems with the particular way that this request policy and procedure is stated, and I'd like to have just discussion only.
We have a motion just to discuss this and for the delay it to the work session,
Postpone
postpone to the work session.
or to the voting session.
Second. Okay, we have a motion is second. Any other discussion, questions? Why?
The reasoning is as follows, Mr. Mayor. The way this is written is it makes an expert out of every department head to do two things. Number one, fulfill the request within the time frame, and number two, to determine what information is releasable. that is really the function of the city clerk, and the way I would write this procedure would be that all written requests go to the city clerk. Verbal requests could be filled. Somebody walks into the building department, wants a copy of a permit, that's one thing. But if they come in and ask for a specific written request, and we have a person who is untrained in the release of information, they could A, not correctly fulfill that request, B, not timely fulfill that request, and C, they could release information that is not releasable under the request. And that is really a function of our city clerk, and I think all written requests should go to her, and she should be responsible for seeing that they are fulfilled.
We have a motion and a second that we postpone this until the next work session. Any other?
The only other thing is I'd just suggest that maybe we review in the work session how it should be written if the rest of the council concurs with my viewpoint.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Okay. Approval to amend the fiscal year 2012 budget to provide for funding for 2 additional firefighters for the city.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to make the motion that we rescind the vote to increase the firefighters by 2 and not amend the 2012 fiscal budget. And during discussion, if that motion is seconded, I'll go into the reasoning why.
We have a motion to rescind the previous vote to provide the 2 firefighters. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Okay, discussion.
Did I not have a motion that
After we deal with this,
If it gets the floor, you can make a motion to postpone it.
and I want to postpone it indefinitely.
Are you making a motion to postpone it?
Indefinitely. What's
Indefinitely.
Point of order, Mr.
Okay.
What's the?
Point of order, I think the motion has to precede mine, does it not?
No. What it says is if a council member believes that the main motion should not be considered by the city council, that council member may move to postpone.
Okay.
You really can't do it until after the motion is made.
Okay, so we deal with his motion first.
Second.
I got it.
Okay, we've got a motion to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, I don't understand.
So we're postponing indefinitely rather than just till the next meeting, right?
No.
That's not what it is? Okay. That's what it is.
It just has no time that it's supposed to come back. That's all that means.
Okay,
Doesn't mean it can't come back, it's not preset.
okay, that's what you wanted? That's what you meant?
I don't think that.
Because what it is right now, he made a motion to postpone until the next work session. You made a motion to postpone. Oh, to rescind it completely, okay. And you made a motion to
I don't
postpone.
understand how we voted on this thing and Mr. Cummings voted for it.
Or you can vote against, excuse me.
Mr. Mayor, he voted for the, adding the 2 fire people. And now we're trying to rescind it after
Why don't we
we
address,
just voted on it, Mr. Mayor.
address his motion?
Here's the situation. We made a mistake. And the mistake is you cannot have an amendment thrown into a motion until we actually have the document of the amended or the amended words of the budget. It's got to be amended. So we have 2 things going in that vote that took place. I voted no, and the reason was we don't know where the additional monies, what line item it's coming out of. And we have to have that brought forward. So we can have, yes, we want 2 firemen. I would have voted yes for 2 firemen. But I had to vote no because we did not have the amendment to bring the money forward.
I addressed that to Mr. Wood at the time, and because I did not know, he said, we have the money, whether it was in the general fund. It was in the minutes, it should be in the minutes. I asked him specifically, and he agreed that the money was available.
Mr. Hope, the fact is, I've asked for council to state the fact. You cannot have the budget amendment. It's got to be a separate issue. Can't be thrown in with a vote for two things.
I think the question here is, do we want this money to come out of the council budget, the mayor's budget, public works budget, or whose budget? I think that's the only remaining question.
Well,
Let me speak to that, because I had forgotten that part of the conversation, but I do recall that you did ask about the money, and I think, and the audio can support this or contradict this. I think my response was that the money would have to come out of the contingency budget. I believe that's correct.
I believe you're right. So there you are. There you are, contingency fund.
Show me the amendment. He has got to present an amendment to the budget to council before we can vote on it, period. Now, Mr. Huffman, I know that you've been at it for a couple of good months. That is the procedure. Every time we make an adjustment to the budget, it's got to be an amendment to the budget. We can't arbitrarily pull money out of the hat. Facts are facts. I have no problem with the firemen, please.
Question, let's vote on
It sure
the
sounds that
motions.
way. It sure sounds that way, John.
Let's vote on, question,
You're welcome.
let's vote on the motions.
Okay, restate your motion.
The first motion is the motion to postpone.
Okay. No further discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no.
No.
I have no idea what the motion is.
The motion was
He wants to postpone it.
postpone indefinitely
Fine, yes.
No.
the item. Okay. Is that was correct, right? Okay. The motion carries. Okay.
I need to ask a question now. Are we administratively, I want to be sure that I don't usurp the authority of council. I want to be sure I know what I'm supposed to be doing in terms of hiring two firefighters, or not do in terms of hiring two firefighters.
You can't hire them.
You cannot.
I think
Because there's no
it
money
makes
funded.
sense for these to be included if we decide to do so in with the budget presentation, which is being formatted now, being formulated now, I believe, or will be very shortly. I believe the departments are submitting their request by May 31st, and after that time, of course, the fire department then will ask for what they feel like they need, and then it will be up to us to approve that.
Well, I guess you can see that we're in dire need of people, firefighters. We're in dire need of it.
Mr. Mayor.
And I'm talking. Excuse me.
Question.
Hold on.
We're in dire need of firefighters, and we need them now, and we're doing a little smoke and mirrors here with our citizens. We have the opportunity. We have the opportunity that we got some of these monies available. We need these things for our ISO. And we're using the fine print here to hold this up.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Cabinet?
We've already voted on Mr. Huffman's motion, and my motion is still on the floor to rescind, because all his did was postpone the budget amendment, and I have made the motion to rescind the vote to increase the firefighters by 2 and not amend the 2012 fiscal budget. And I'd like to go into discussion on that motion because it has been seconded.
There is a motion and a second to rescind the item. Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to discuss the reason why I made that motion. When we voted to do 2 firefighters, 2 facts or 3 facts were brought out. Number 1 fact was that we would be funding it from $100,000 in savings in our insurance, hazard insurance. The reality of the fact is that it is not $100,000 in fire insurance savings. It is actually $45,000 a year. And in this current fiscal year, it amounts to, I believe, $17,000. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Wood. $17,000. $17,000 in no way comes anywhere near close to funding 2 firefighters. The second thing is that the number used at the time for 2 firefighters was $50,000 a year. The actual number that it costs to hire, equip, and train a firefighter is $65,000. So the math just isn't there that we're saving $45,000, but we're now going to incur $130,000, which is $85,000 from other areas in the budget. The third thing that I want to bring out is that you appointed a fire services committee, and that fire services committee was charged at looking at all the options of increasing fire services throughout the community. We held 3 meetings. We came out with 6 options to meet specific objectives established by the committee and also established by input from the public. The results of that committee, which I bring to council, was that, and only 2 members, unfortunately, only 2 members of the committee were there, so to arrive at a consensus, the consensus opinion of the committee to recommend to the full council would be that we take option number 1, which would be to undertake only those steps necessary to maintain our ISO rating of 4, which we can do very readily and very easily under Mr. Wood's approval with an expenditure of approximately $6,000 to $7,000 a year. Therefore, until this council, in my opinion, sits down and decides the way and direction we should go other than status quo relative to fire services, we should not be hindering the decision-making by immediately putting 2 firemen in that we do not have funds from savings as indicated in the original decision. And that's the reason that I am asking to rescind that. If those firemen can be justified, Mr. Wood, or Chief Floyd, through Mr. Wood, would budget them for the fiscal year 2013, the process which is already started, and whether it's 2 or 6, it would be up to the Chief Floyd to justify the need for those firefighters, and Mr. Wood then to carry that budget forward to this council, and we would have the opportunity to vote for it or against it.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Beresford, do you have?
I just want to make sure it was $17,000.
Oh, okay. I knew you would want to speak.
Yes.
Mr. Huffman?
The $45,000 that Mr. Combs mentioned, so what do we do with that? Are you going to put it in the general fund and then we just spend it somewhere else? I'm saying to the citizens, we need fire protection and we need it now. And this is something that is critical. Yes, we'd like to have 4, but that is not as important as protection for the citizens. And we've got some monies to spend there. We've got some contingencies money. It can be done. It's just whether the council wants to do this, what's right for the citizens, or they don't.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Beresford?
The number is $17,000 for the year 2012. This money is spread over a 2-year period. So it's not 45 or 46, whatever, it's 17. And that's what we look at for 2012. 2013, we work on a new budget. I support what Mr. Huffman is trying to do, trying to get some additional firefighters. I know that Mr. Wood and the chief have looked diligently into the issue, and hopefully we'll see some good numbers come up from there. So
here we go. We're kicking it down the road again. That's exactly what we're doing. We're kicking it down the road. Well, it won't happen because it's just.
Well, if you continue your support, I'll continue supporting you, and we won't kick it down the road. But you've got to do it according to the procedures that we're trying to work with.
Okay, I think we've had enough discussion on that. Yes. We're going to go ahead and vote. We have a motion to rescind the approval to amend the budget to provide for funding of 2 additional firefighters.
Roll call, please, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I have a roll call, okay. Mr. Beresford?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Bryant? No. No. Okay. Mr. Goodman? No.
No. Yes.
Okay, we have, the motion fails 4-2. Mr. Beresford and Mr. Cummings voted for it. Yes.
Then I would ask that Mr. Wood bring forward to the work session where this money is going to be coming from, if that's the case.
Mr. Mayor?
Well, the motion,
No, I mean-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The motion has been tabled indefinitely, so we probably
Indefinitely.
don't have to talk about it until Mr. Hoffman brings it
Brought
up
back
again.
up. Right.
So we can just sit down.
Okay. Under new business, we have a presentation of the comprehensive annual financial report.
Our auditor, James Finch, is here, as well as our CFO, Mr. Ingram, if necessary.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Mr. Cook mentioned, my name is James Spence. I'm with Malden and Jenkins. I serve as the lead manager on the audit. You should have before you a copy of your comprehensive annual financial report, which is a thicker document, as well as the annual audit agenda, which is what I'll be presenting from tonight. If you'll flip to the first page of that, it's just kind of an overview of what I'll go over. Our responsibility in the audit process is to provide an opinion on your financial statements. And this will summarize the financial statements and the footnotes that are included in the comprehensive annual financial report. On the next page, the financial statements are the responsibility of the city and its management. And again, our responsibility is just to express an opinion on those financial statements. We did express a clean opinion, which means your financial statements are materially correct for the year ending September 30th, 2011. If you look on page 3, you'll see for the city as a whole this year, your net asset position increased from $29 million to $30.6 million for your governmental activities, and your business type activities saw a decrease from $53 million to $52.9 million. It is important to note that of those two numbers, of the $24 million for governmental activities, or $30 million for governmental activities, 24 represents capital assets, which is your roads and infrastructure and vehicles that all governments have. And likewise, of the business type activities of the 52 million, 55 million represents your infrastructure. That leaves about 156,000 for the governmental activities and a negative 2 million for business type activities that are not restricted in some nature or assets, capital assets. Starting at the bottom of page 3, going through page 5 is what we call a Cliff Notes version of your footnotes. It tells you what each footnote is expressing, so that when you're looking at your comprehensive annual financial report, you have a summarized version of what each footnote is explaining. On page 6, I do want to point out the city does prepare a comprehensive annual financial report, which is above and beyond the required reporting requirements. It's not something a majority of the governments in the state do. It is an extra step that does speak highly for the city's management for putting this together, because it has additional information that is not required by the minimum standards. Starting on page 7 is just some required communication to explain. We did not have any difficulties with management. They did work with us to provide us all information. We did have audit adjustments that were proposed and discussed with management and have been posted and are reflected in the comprehensive annual financial report. On page 10 through page 13, you have our findings and recommendations that have been discussed with management, and they are in the process, to our understanding, of implementing new controls and procedures to correct these items.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Unless you're referring to page 102 through 107, 8, 9, yeah, 7.
You're in the conference, you're in the financials?
I mean, that's what you're referring to, your recommendations for improvements, criteria, weaknesses, etc. Okay. My only point, and Mr. Wood, 102, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages. It seems like I've had access to the audit for 4 years now, prior to becoming on council and then being on council. And every year I see this same stuff in the back of this book. Now, I want to point out, I understand, because of the limited amount of personnel we have, sometimes we can't split duties or spread it to segregate it out. I understand that. But there are issues in here that I think we need to address and get those corrected, because like I said, I see this almost every year. It's the same thing over and over again. So I'm asking, it says the response is, we'll take necessary steps in the future to ensure that all equity balances are reconciled. We will take these steps. Same thing every year. So I want something, this 2012 audit, when it comes, that shows that, hey, we've done it.
Mr. Mayor?
You gave the recommendations. So I would like to know, in some instances, we don't have manpower, but some others, we should be able to do.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, one of the things that Mr. Wood and I, you asked my advice on, and I've worked with him, is like, for example, under where we have segregation of duties, which is always going to appear on every audit we have because of the limited size of staff that we have. But we went through several of these, and he's already taken a couple of steps, John, or Mr. Beresford, that probably should be highlighted. Like, for example, if you go down, individuals who review and sign checks and can initiate checks for expenditures. This actually refers to our accountant filling in at times for the person that handles accounts payable. And one of the initial steps that we took, or that Mr. Wood has undertaken just to address that particular item, was we have removed the authority from the accountant's ability to establish vendors, which means she couldn't set up a vendor and then write a check to that vendor. And we've initiated a report coming out of the system that shows all what I call internal checks to be reviewed by our CFO. Now, this doesn't really address the segregation of duties, but it provides the accounting department with a way to catch the horse as it's running out of the barn, so to speak. And with our limited staff, we have to approach things as to catching in some cases, because we have to utilize our personnel. But he's already undertaking some of these steps, and he should probably provide us, my suggestion would he provide us with a list of these similar things that he's doing to address these particular items on the audit. And that should suffice, I think, in answering your question.
Mr. Rush?
Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, should we not have this kind of discussion at the work session and let the gentleman present what he's presenting?
I mean, I think normally it was presented, it used to be presented at the work session, actually.
Okay.
But, yeah, I tend to agree. Let's go ahead, Jen, if you would, please.
I will not speak anymore. You believe,
On page 13,
one more question.
page 13 through page 17, we're providing some information on some of the new upcoming auditing and accounting standards that are coming out in the next few years. This is in there just to keep council informed, as well as we've gone over some of these with management, and we'll continue to work with management to make sure the city takes the appropriate steps in implementing any new policies and standards that are required by the county standards. And on page 19, I would like to point out, just to make sure council is aware, we do offer free continuing education for all of our clients. That includes council and management. I know management at times has taken advantage of this, and this is just in here to provide you some information on the type of topics we've covered in the past, and let you know if there's anyone within the city that you think would benefit from any of these classes. There's some contact information on here to sign up for any of those classes. They are quarterly. And if you have any questions at this time, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? John?
Statement, no questions. I would like to have this in my hands prior to sit down this evening and just take a look at it. I did have the comprehensive report, but encapsulating this here, it would have been ideal to have that. I might not ask another question, but it's just...
Let me just say that the process is, that's what he is doing tonight. He is delivering that to you tonight. So the purpose of him being here was to make that delivery.
But then I was told I couldn't ask questions, that it should be done in a work session, so I'm caught between a rock and a hard place.
You were able to ask questions, I think.
Well, are you going to be present during the work session to answer questions? Or somebody from your firm?
We can be.
Sure.
If
That's
council would like that, we can.
historically what we've done, at least the last few years, the presentation, I think, and the discussion was in a work session. So
This would normally have occurred at the last meeting, but Mr. Bench had a schedule conflict and was not able to be here. So this is one meeting removed from the normal schedule.
And also, we did have to get an extension on our audit, which we need to look at in the future.
Okay. Anyone else? Would it be the consensus here that we would like for Mr. Bench or someone from his firm to be here to answer questions in the next meeting?
Yes. And will that be the work session or the meeting?
That'd be the work session.
Could I have one question, Mr. Moon, sir? In your professional opinion, bottom line, always there's room for improvement, but bottom line, does this audit represent an improvement from last year's audit?
Well, as I pointed out, the governmental activities, you did increase your fund balance position or your net asset position, I believe it was by approximately $800,000.
In terms of our administrative responsibilities and operations, do you find from your audit review this year that we are administering those responsibilities with any improvements from the prior year?
There were issues we had last year that have been corrected this year, so I would say that is an improvement. But, I mean, as you say, there's always room for improvement. I guess keep in mind, you brought on a new CFO this year, right at the end of your fiscal year, so I think with a full year of a full management team under your belt, things will continue to get better.
Would you say that the water billing situation and accounting relative to that would be the single most difficult part of that, or negative part?
For this year's audit?
Yes.
It did provide several challenges.
I like the way you put that. Okay.
But we worked with management, we made it through.
Okay. Thank you, James.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Okay. Request for beer and wine pouring license for Romeo's Canton LLC, 1453 Riverstone Parkway, alley manager James Heaney. I think we just announced something.
Well, it really shouldn't even be on the agenda. I think this is a new license for this company, and that's why I got on the agenda. I think what we've set up is a process where the first time a location is approved, the council will approve it. From then on, it'll be administrative. So this could have been done administratively.
According to our staff, they met the requirements. Do I have a motion that we approve this?
So moved.
Have a motion second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. City manager's report.
Susan, can you activate that little photograph for me, please, right quick? While she's doing that, let me just report on one or two other things. We're currently on schedule to receive proposals from the various water and sewer system contract operators on the 25th of May. We did receive notice today from one of the potential contractors that they would not be offering a proposal, but presumably that still leaves 5 or 6 in the pool. Our hope is that the staff can analyze and prioritize those proposals. We'll use Mr. West, Mr. Hatabian, both professional engineers, Mr. Patton, and also our contract engineer, Mr. Troxler, in that process, and then we'll offer a recommendation with supporting documentation and explanation to the mayor and council in time to keep that process on schedule. But the main point for now is simply that we're currently on schedule. Heritage Park signage, that's a photograph of a silhouette that's painted down there. Just go through those right quick. These are not the 3 or 4 of them, so it won't take but a second. See there, and then the signage. You can see it. There's a silhouette bicycle going clockwise, pedestrians going counterclockwise. Thank you. That's all of the photograph. At the prior city council meeting, I developed the clear impression that a majority, if not all, of city council wanted to implement some type of directional signage at Heritage Park. Subsequent to that meeting, it became apparent to me that the cost to do so was incidental. And based on what seemed to me to be the stated will or interest of council, I did authorize Mr. Ken Jimmy to proceed with that limited signage. I'm assured that the sidewalk silhouettes are painted with removable paint, so that can be easily reversed if necessary. But I'm criticized by some people for not taking initiative and then criticized by some others for taking initiative. So I guess people whose purpose in life is to be critical can find ample opportunities to satisfy those urges. I do agree with Mr. Rust on one point. I have been at the park for the last 3 nights, personally, observing how park visitors, walkers, and bicyclists interact. And in those 3 nights there, I saw only 1 bicyclist at all during those 3 nights. But based on my observations of how people walked, I didn't see any indication that signage was going to prompt a lot of change. I'll certainly welcome, any improvements to that plan. That was a start. If anybody cannot see that sometimes we're our own worst enemies in terms of dysfunction and agreeing and arguing and debating, I put something out there, and if it can be improved on, I'll welcome that enthusiastically. But if painting those sidewalks on that sidewalk with removable paint in an effort to at least get some effort in motion to address the perceived problem can be construed as some usurpation of council, then I beg to differ with that perception or opinion. We've got a color pamphlet that's going to encourage citizens to be considerate of the fats and oils and grease problem. Yes, sir.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
You down there on your 2-wheeler?
Yes, sir.
Were you, there's no spot for that.
No, sir, there's not.
So were you on the grass?
Grass and sidewalk, yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to check, make sure that.
Following the directional signs, yes, sir. Yes, sir. A color pamphlet encouraging citizens to be considerate of the fats, oils, and grease problems that was discussed a couple of meetings ago has been developed, and that's being inserted in the water and sewer bills during the next 4 billing cycles. And our citizens can look for that informational pamphlet and hopefully acquaint themselves with that problem and the fact that it is a costly one for all of us, and what we can do to minimize that problem and reduce those costs. But you can look for those pamphlets in the water and sewer bills forthcoming. We have completed the City Hall roofing project, and we're proceeding with the next step. You will recall that about a year or so ago, we had the large assembly room assessed for the presence of asbestos, which was confirmed. We're now soliciting proposals for entirely removing that asbestos or encapsulating it if that's possible. The encapsulation procedure, were we to decide to go that route, would involve sheetrocking or otherwise encapsulating the asbestos contained in the ceiling and other areas. We are not certain that that is an acceptable alternative, but we are developing plans both for full removal and also for encapsulation, and then corresponding cost estimates for both of those approaches, and we will report those findings to you when they're available. Closure of the landfill at the Public Works Department is ongoing because that project has a tendency to be one of those out of sight, out of mind projects. I've asked for a status update to be presented by our consulting engineer at the next council work session. We have drafted a very rudimentary set of rules and regulations for Southview Cemetery. That draft has been sent to 2 of our local mortuary firms to solicit advice from them as to any additional changes which should be considered for inclusion in those rules and regulations. We have asked staff to proceed with putting a generator at the reservoir. We tried to distinguish that from the building issue, which I know is a matter of ongoing discussion and review by City Council. But currently, we don't have a backup electricity source at the reservoir. And electricity is necessary to power the compressors, which keep the air bladders full. The dam gates are raised and lowered by the air bladders. And if we were to lose pressure in the bladders as a result of a power failure, we'd be unable to operate the gates, and that could invite the likelihood of flooding properties downstream from the reservoir. The cost to the city of that should not exceed $10,000 or $12,000, but in the interest of public safety and operational effectiveness, we have gone ahead with that project. As was mentioned earlier, the Arts Festival's in Brown Park, and Ms. Gold and her group have been working hard. You've probably seen some of them around lately to make that a success, but Mr. Canton GA and his crew are all to be complimented as well. Anyone driving downtown lately has no doubt been inconvenienced by the various street improvement projects. Obviously, that's the price we pay for progress, although everybody's certainly glad to see those taking place. Our LeMig, you remember that's the old LARP program. Our LeMig street resurfacing involving 10 city streets is underway this week. The Hickory Flat project is now underway, and I talked to the project supervisor for the Waleska Street project earlier this week, and he assures us that that project is also on schedule. So again, we're sorry for the inconvenience, but we're looking forward to the end product of each of those projects. And I certainly want to thank Mr. West and Mr. Conjimi and their staff for work on that. We have ordered over 300 regulatory signs for our traffic sign replacement and upgrade program. Mr. Russell wants to review those signs and approve those. We'll get him a plan on those. We restriped over a mile of Great Sky Parkway last Friday. We're making repairs to a faulty ground slope at the reservoir, and next week we'll begin grouting on a construction joint, which needs that work also up at the reservoir. We're awaiting final approval from the property owner, TPA, for the documents which will authorize us to develop the public launch site near the intersection of Bluffs Parkway and Fate Con Road. Our Public Works Department is ready to proceed with that work as soon as we get those documents. And I just want to say also real quickly that in light of an overall improved audit, and I was hoping that it would be that, I certainly want to thank 2 people who have really proven their work to the city and then some, and that is Nathan and Melissa Forrester. Nathan concluded his initial 6 months of employment with the city last month. It seems to me like he's been with us for 10 times that long. He probably does to him too. He came to us in the fall of last year, right smack in the middle of our water and sewer billing crisis. And he and I talked about it at the time that he was interviewed for that position, and I was hopeful, although still a little bit uncertain, that he really understood what he was getting himself into. In fact, on his very first week on the job, we were summoned by one council member to meet with a group of approximately 100 or so citizens who had gathered to ask not always friendly or compassionate questions about the building situation. Nathan, during the first week, was certainly baptized in the fire. Those were unpleasant days and nights for all of us during that time, and I'm glad to see that most of those problems hopefully are now behind us. But Nathan has certainly matured at light speed in the position of CFO, and even though he came from a slightly different background as an auditor, he refused to stay behind the learning curve for very long. And Melissa, too, has been an enduring and consistently supportive professional ally in this process, and she continues to work diligently to manage our financial program and to stretch all of our too inadequate resources as far as they'll go. And both of them have worked very hard throughout the year to help provide us with the best audit report possible. And I certainly want to publicly commend both of them for their work ethic, their enthusiasm, and their consistently pleasant temperaments. Thank you.
Thank you. On the mayor's report, you have in your package there a Canton City Council meeting procedure for agenda items for the work session and the action session. regarding when you should submit items for the agenda, and which is basically the Thursday before the following meeting week, and that the fact that the you have that. And basically what it says is that we won't take action on other items that are not on the agenda or placed on the agenda unless it's an emergency, and that would require a majority vote of the council to do so. If something comes up, and it will from time to time, that needs to be dealt with, that we don't have on our agenda, we will then vote it would be an emergency and deal with that at that time. Does anybody have any questions? This is just a suggestion and a recommendation.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make the motion that we adopt the procedure for agenda items as proposed.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
The second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions?
Yes, sir. I've got a question. So what we're saying here, I think the thing that jumps out at me is that when we sit down as a body to meet, we're agreeing to limit ourselves, that we can't make decisions except on certain meetings. I think the way we've been doing it in the past has been fine. We have more or less I guess you might call it a gentleman's agreement that at the work sessions we generally don't vote on things, but I think that this is complicated and unnecessary and restricting us unnecessary in future councils. I don't think it's a good idea to just say we can only vote every once a month. And
That's not what it says.
we all, well,
If it's an emergency, you can vote anytime.
well, who decides if it's an emergency? What's the
Council.
criteria? So that just, again, it just complicates it. We have to say, I mean,
Mr. Mayor?
we're just going to have continuous complicated. Let's just leave it like it is. That's one thing that's not screwed up about the way we're doing business. Let's leave that alone.
The reason I agree with this is, very simply put, is that every council member here deserves the time in which to prepare for a council meeting. And when we have a motion made in the middle of the meeting without even having it on the agenda, none of the other council members have had any time in which to prepare to adequately discuss that item. And what this does is it basically puts the format of a work session where we discuss things, we have adequate time to do our individual research, and then puts the decision-making at a voting session. It allows for the interjection of emergency items at any session, and allows the council to decide whether or not that's an emergency item. I find it a disadvantage to me, and I think every one of us would find it a disadvantage if all of a sudden one other, or I as a council member, spring a topic at a meeting for which none of the other council members have any time to prepare for.
Let me say one thing. I think even beyond that, one of the most important reasons I see for doing that is public awareness, public notice of what we're going to be talking about. The law now says we have to post our meetings at least 7 days in advance now. And it is inherently unfair to the public if they have no idea we're going to take up a topic, and we take up a topic and take action on it, and they may have had interest in that topic or that issue, and they would not have had adequate time or notice to even know that it's coming up, you see. And that to me is what's important about this, is that public notice is probably the most important thing. The other thing is it basically does what we've been doing. It just puts it in writing, basically.
And
Mr. Mayor?
I believe Mr.
I have no issue with what's written on the page. My only question is this now covered in some form in our administrative code? And if it's not, should this not be in the administrative code instead of just an independent motion to do something? And I guess I could ask the city attorney that question. I don't have the code with me, but it seems like we covered, the code has, you know, how the agenda should be and in order and all the rest of the stuff. It would seem that this should be in there.
I don't think any of this contradicts anything in the code, nor do I think it's covered, because it's really just specifying how to prepare the agenda, which is not. And then how to vote, whether to vote at work sessions or not, is not addressed in the code.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor? Yes. Good or bad, our legislature downtown always seems to be able to put the brakes on situations where it makes it difficult for us in a local basis to do our business. And for us to step in and now put even further restrictions of slowing us up and doing our jobs. They meet, and sometimes, of course, when they're in session, day in, day out, day in, day out. And we're meeting once a month. This, I see it, although I understand the emergency thing, is just another way to slow up progress. And folks, I watched this council a little bit prior to coming on to council, and we got issues that need to be addressed, and those big issues like fire and the reservoir and the water billing, I mean, those things get hacked around pretty good, but some of these issues are so small, and we need to get on with business. And we're a council here that is got enough brain power that we can sit down and make some decisions. And I just feel like this is just another step in government getting slower.
If anything were to come up in between that 7 days, we could certainly have a special call meeting the night of the work session to act on it for action if we needed to. That really wouldn't preclude that, but we need to know what it is, and we need some adequate time for public notices on the thing. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I sat in for 5 years of council meetings, and that was prior to you becoming the mayor. And they operated on each council meeting. They made decisions, snap decisions, etc. You came in and instituted the work session, which I think is the ideal situation for 2 reasons. One, for the public's sake, so the public can have an idea of what we're going to talk about and be able to come in and give input. Then the action session is the 3rd Thursday. And I think that the various issues that the council feels that needs to be brought forward, then it didn't just pop in. It came over a period of time thinking about it, hopefully, and saying, I'm going to put it on the agenda. And I think the program here doesn't slow anything up. I think, if anything, it makes it more clear, because we just got through debating an issue that popped up on a work session, and it would have been better served if we had had time to dialogue on it, then bring it to action.
Okay. Anyone else?
The last comment, Mr. Mayor, I think just to protect us because of the changes in the open meetings law, that we should not, on the spur of the moment, vote for things because we could possibly be in violation of that open meetings law and the posting of the agenda. And all this does is formalize what we basically do right now anyway. And
any other
I've got a question maybe for Bobby. I'm wondering what the state law, if there's a state law that maybe addresses this. I know I've read somewhere that any time a quorum is present, decisions can be made. And I'm wondering if it would maybe require some research that we're not, I mean, if say we make this little rule in-house here, but if one of us makes a motion and a second, and we we can vote and make decisions anytime we meet, I believe, is what state law says, but
Well, state law doesn't distinguish between work sessions. There's no such thing as a non-voting meeting in state laws. So that's an internal policy, but the fact that, I mean, a majority of the council can decide to do anything. So if you're at a work session, and what our ordinance says is, it doesn't use the word emergency, I think it says necessity, but we'll take that to mean the same thing. You have to move to amend the agenda to deal with something. All it requires, I think this requires you to do, is a majority saying, we think it needs to be done now and can't wait. And you can still do that at a work session under the proposed rules.
so would it be fair, Bobby, to say that this is really worthless?
No.
Because we can do anything we want to?
Well, but that's what it says. But it also specifies how to get the agenda thing. That's what I read.
Well, that part's good, but I'm talking about the part about not being able to
Well,
vote when we.
from what I understand is the point was just to make it at work sessions that you don't vote unless you really have to, which I think.
I think that the idea behind this is that we have a concurrence, that this is the way we want to operate. If you want to bring up a motion during a work session and you get a second, the council votes for it, I might say, we really talked about this and we did it, our agreement or policy is maybe this, but that certainly will not keep you from voting on it. You can still vote on it. But I think there ought to be some procedure here for submitting for the agenda, when that needs to be done, and how we operate. Particularly, the public knows by and large that, or should know by and large, that we're going to talk about and discuss items in the work session, and then generally vote at the next meeting. I mean, that is plenty of time for the public to come in, and if they see it on this agenda, plenty of time for them to come in and have input. They can always make input on it, get on the agenda if they want to, or just speak through the public input period. But, it's up to you. Mr. Rush?
The only other question I would have, and I think I know the answer to this, but this procedure does not preclude any member from council to call the city clerk on Monday of the week of the work session and say, could you add this to the agenda?
Well, it doesn't preclude you from calling, but it probably would keep her from doing it because she's going to have the agenda already posted on hopefully by the Friday before the Thursday. The best thing to do in that case I think would be to amend the agenda when you get there to include that item. And you can do that.
And I think probably the best thing to do would be to ask that a notice be sent out, so that these folks are not.
Or that you're going to amend the agenda, but I think procedurally, we've had that happen a couple times where the audience has one agenda that they got on Friday and then there's no, and that we really need to avoid that. So if you want to add something after the agenda's been published, really just come to the meeting. If you want to give notice ahead of time that you intend to do that, at least people will know what you're going to do.
Mr. Mayor. And even if, in the last instance, even if it's the date of the agenda, I think we should restrict it that any agenda modification should be done at the beginning of the meeting, not during the meeting.
Right. I would tend to agree with that. Okay. We have a motion and a second on the table here.
Okay. What was it again?
To
Motion is
Okay.
to adopt procedure. Okay. All right. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Okay, the motion carries. All right. Next item.
That's it.
I'm getting there. Yeah. I wanted to mention one thing too, is that if you haven't, I know you've all heard about the community garden that
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, did I leave something out?
No, it wasn't on the agenda.
It's under mayor's report. It's on mine.
I just got A on it.
Once again, I'm going to talk about this one. The community garden is really looking good up there. Home Depot and their volunteers and other donors and everything have really made that look really good up there. If you if you have an interest in you know, having a slot up there, a plot, I guess you'd call it, and I think they're 4 by 12, and they're half filled with dirt already, and, you know, you can get your soil mix and all that, fertilizer put in there. Lane Wood, we can get you her number. I think there may be a few more available, but there's not many, and they got about 40 or so of those up there. But it's a great place, and a lot of people have really worked very, very hard to put it together up there. I think it's worth taking a look at if you haven't. It's on Big Oak Drive at the water tank, just on the other side of the water tank from Highway 20. We have here the Help Our City Win, the Mayor's Recycling Challenge within the county. It's beginning June 1st. During the months of June and July, all the cities in Cherokee County will be competing to see which one can collect the most recycling. We need for you to do your part to keep recyclable waste out of the landfills, and at the same time enjoy a little friendly competition. In addition to your curbside recycling, which does count, you may drop off recycling at the containers located at City Hall or the collection site located on Ridge Road. So recycle all you can and help us get the most weight. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to weigh that, maybe like they do now to some degree, but hopefully we should, because some of the other cities don't really have curbside recycling, I think. So I think we should do real well on this one anyway, but do your best. We had a resignation from the Planning and Zoning Committee. Mark Walker, who's here tonight, as a matter of fact, has stepped down, so I will be making a nomination to you probably at the notifying you at the work session, and then we will be voting on it at the June council meeting, according to our policy. Also, there are some, I believe, some terms ending that some folks will be up for reappointment or replacement from the DDA. I believe that Wanda Roach, Lewis Klein, and Cleveland Chambers terms end at the end of June. So we'll be bringing a nomination to you for those. So I believe that's all that I have.
One question, Jim.
Yes.
We skipped over item 11.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did we do that?
Yeah.
Do we have any council introduced items?
I'd just like to make one comment. I just want to tell Scott, I appreciate you taking initiative on those items. Getting that generator up there, I mean, if we can't even operate the gates if there's a power outage. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing the signs. That's an issue we looked foolish on 6 or 8 months ago. You just got in there, handled it. Like you said, it's a start. We'll see how that works. Keep it up. Keep taking initiative. Do stuff. Don't be, I mean, thank you for going ahead and taking that.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Motion second. Those in favor?
I make a motion to do something.